Welcome back, guys. I actually want to touch on something as its own topic because I scratched the surface with it twice. So, what we're going to be talking about today is the Star of David, World War II, and the Baphomet. If you watched my Moses Scroll video, then you should know that this book right here by Ross Nichols is a must have, especially for those of us that find the Dead Sea Scrolls interesting. Because there is a law of Moses that is in here at the end after he explains the story behind the manuscript. This is 72 years before the Dead Sea Scrolls were even found altogether during World War II. So I'm going to be referring to this book, and I'm also going to be referring to the passage from Ephesians, and I'm going to be referring to the Star of David and what it actually is, because in the Hebrew New Testament of Ephesians 6, I pointed out that the Elim, the ram gods, is probably what Paul was talking about, is referring to the Baphomet. Now, the Baphomet is a five-pointed star with the words Leviathan, Lamed Vav, Yod, Tav, Nun all around it. So it's kind of funny how Satan uses Hebrew. That should say a lot. But also, a lot of people talk smack, especially in the Hebrew roots, about the synagogue of the Jews and the star of Satan. Just right off the bat, I believe the five-pointed Leviathan star is the star of Satan, and that the six-pointed Jewish star is not. And I'm going to explain that. So I have to refer to the Moses scroll. I have to refer to Ephesians 6. And I have to also refer to the Hebrew Revelation. If you haven't seen that video either, I didn't really go over it in there, but we're going to go to that because I did share a picture in there concerning the synagogue of Satan in Revelation 2 and in Revelation 3. Without further ado, here is why the six-pointed Star of David is not the synagogue of the Jews mark, who say they are Jews and are the sons of Satan, or are the synagogue of Satan, as if synagogue specifically or only pertains to Satan. Synagogue is simply a Greek word for gathering. It's a gathering place, right? And when you use the Septuagint, the first time that it's used is in Genesis 1, when God gathered the waters from the land. He synagogued the waters, right? So that automatically destroys the synagogue of Satan that a lot of people like to use it as, that like that name specifically belongs to a Jewish synagogue being satanic. It's not. The word synagogue is a Greek word for just gathering. It's a place of gathering. It's a kahal. It's a odah. The word for congregation here, or this place of gathering, is not kahal, but it's odah. Right? It's Ein Dalid Hey. Right? Congregation. Different word than synagogue. But that word is not used here when it says, I know your deeds and sorrows and the blasphemy of those who say they are Yehudim but are not. They are of the synagogue of Satan. No, the Hebrew here reads they are the sons of Satan. Here, Hama Mebnei Ha Satan. There was a typo here. It doesn't say the synagogue of the Jews in the Hebrew Revelation. It says they are the sons of Satan. They are Hama Mebnei Hasatan. Sons of Satan. They are from the sons of Satan. Now again, in Revelation 3:8, in the Cochin Hebrew book of Revelation, Revelation 3 verse 9. See, I will deliver them up, those who are of the fellowship of Satan, who say they are Yehudim but are not. They are only liars. See, I will make them come to pray at your feet and acknowledge that I have loved you. So again, the original is the Greek, says, I will make them that are of the synagogue of Satan that say they are Jews and are not. And so a lot of people attack every synagogue and every Jew. So what is that word for fellowship of Satan and not synagogue of Satan? That word is mechavrotat. Mechavrotat. Hasatan. From the fellowship of Satan. So, stop with the synagogue of Satan nonsense. Okay? We are going to properly stick to the Hebrew interpretation, not the Greek. And the Greek completely disagrees with that statement anyway, because it simply just means gathering. But the Hebrew interpretation of the gathering of Satan are michavrot, fellowship of Satan. So even a satanic temple is not a synagogue. It could be, but it's not. That's not the name they're going to go by. They're just going to be a satanic temple. And so that's going to be the fellowship of Satan. Anybody attending those are the fellowship of Satan, or sons of Satan. We have to go to the Star of David itself. And so the Star of the Jews, right? I'll show a picture right here. It has 6 stars. 6 sides, 666. This is what they think the mark of the beast is going to be. This is actually David's seal. Now, how do you spell David in Hebrew? This is how you spell it in modern Hebrew, but this is not how you spell it in Paleo Hebrew. And so what a lot of people don't understand, don't consider, and just flat out don't know about is that the Paleo Hebrew was what King David used to write in. Right? This is what the Moses scroll was preserved in. Paleo Hebrew, possibly by the hand of Jeremiah before the Babylonian captivity. Now, if you mix these symbols together, you will get the star, right? With the wa or the vav in the middle of these two triangles. That's David's name as a seal. Right now, today we have that same Star of David, but with a Zadi for Zionism, right? But a modern Zadi looks like a Paleo Vav, or Wa, a Paleo Wa, which is the letter Y, like a capital Y. And so you can see the influence from the Paleo even to the modern. This truly is an authentic star. This is the Star of David. This is the seal of David that everybody hijacked for wisdom, right? The Masons have their own. Other religions that we've seen use the same star. And so a lot of people affiliate this with pagan practice, with pagan, Saturn worship and all these things. But simply it is David's name as a seal for his kingship when he would stamp a seal on a letter of importance. Now, a lot of people will go to the 2 verses in the Bible, the one from Acts 7 and the one from Amos, that talk about the Star of Moloch. Now, here's where the Dead Sea Scrolls comes in handy, because there was no such thing as vowel pointings back then. And so the way that the Dead Sea Scrolls and their commentary interpret the same verse from Amos is as Malak, not Moloch, Malak, king, the star of your king. Now, they interpret what this is. They say that the star is Messiah. And we go, wait a minute, where's that in the Bible? Well, in Numbers, it talks about the star that would be related to the birth of the Messiah. And so what the Magi saw was a prophecy from Numbers, which is referred to by Amos about the star of your God beyond the tents of Damascus, right? And so the star of your God is the star that appeared when Yeshua was born. It's not the six-pointed star of David. That's just ridiculous. So that already defeats half the argument, right? And so we have the Dead Sea Scrolls to thank for that. The other side of the argument is Acts chapter 7. Now, the Hebrew book of Acts has not been released yet, so I'm wondering myself if it is written the same, and so it's just a misinterpretation of vowels, or if it's a corrupted text altogether, right? Because the Septuagint was edited by Pharisees. As much as they didn't change, and as much of it still remains closer to the Dead Sea Scrolls, there are passages that are missing because we know that Justin Martyr, as much as we hate him, he mentioned that the Septuagint changed because he noticed there was missing verses. And he gives you some of those verses that were missing in Jeremiah's book or Nehemiah's book, simply just referring to the Messiah. They're just not there anymore, and that they changed. There was different versions of the Septuagint. Just like today, there are 2 or 3 different versions of the Septuagint. But what were those other versions before it? When did it stop? When did they stop the editing? When did they stop trying to change the scriptures? We don't really know. So we trust the Septuagint. Yeah, we do, to a certain extent. But we have to go to the Hebrew revelation. That's why it's so important. Synagogue of Satan, these Jewish people, they are not the synagogue of Satan. You know what? Some of them might be, but not because they're in a synagogue and not because they're Jewish, right? They're simply in a congregation. They're simply in a gathering. They're simply just people gathering. This is connected to World War II. So let's connect this to World War II. Now, the Moses Scroll, the story of Moses Shapira, who found the Deuteronomy Scroll, the original Deuteronomy written in first person by Moses, possibly rewritten by the hand of Jeremiah, because it was preserved in Paleo Hebrew. This is related to World War II. Here is how. Back in this time, this was the early 1860s and 70s, when this all occurred, right? If you read the story, there are a lot of German scholars littered through this book. If you wanted to be anybody, if you made any discovery, if you wanted to be recognized, if you wanted to work with like top line biblical scholarship and be authentic in the eyes of the public, you went through Germany. A lot of people don't even know that the Hebrew in that time was different. They still pronounced the tav with the th, and most of the vet words were mostly b. So it wasn't nevi'im, prophets, it was nebaim with a b. Just so you guys know, the Hebrew has changed since the early 1900s. It's different. There were different rules back then. So that's why it's really important to actually do your research and study older books and see what was actually going on less or a little bit more than 100 years ago. But this is how it's related to World War II in a sense. The German people, right? The Jews are the synagogue of Satan. Let's see if that's true. The German people were gonna do complete genocide. Now, the story that we all know is that Hitler was simply a racist. Now, there's 2 dark theories out there, and I'm gonna kind of combine them. No, there's one dark theory out there, contrary to the story we know, but I'm gonna combine the 2 based off some key factors from the Moses Scroll. So as I said, top biblical scholars were always Germans. They were all the Europeans in this time period before World War I and II, right? They even École Biblique is French, and it's one of the top biblical schools ever. Dr. Annie Joubert, who wrote the calendar book, that made the connection from the Dead Sea Scrolls and Jubilees and Enoch, that was the calendar reflected in the Gospels. That there was two calendars, right? That genius lady is from École Biblique, which is a French Hebrew school on that side of the world. It's not over here in the US, right? This is where all the top scholars were. Notice how they're not really around anymore. A lot of people that you can quote, Charles Spurgeon and most, Smith Wigglesworth and all that. Yeah, they were over there in England, but they were not these people. They were not these brilliant people that you can't even name, such as Annie Joubert and Frederick Bleek. Alfred Edersheim. Dietrich Bonhoeffer from World War II. Even if you've read any of his books, how profound this man was, the big words that he used, the complexity in his description of the divinity of Christ and his cost of discipleship is just so astounding. But where are these people? What happened to the German people? For them killing the Jews, if the Jews really are the synagogue of Satan, if they really are these wicked people, something happened to the Germans, right? And so I don't believe that simply you being Jewish, or how they like to call them Sephardic and all these other things, that they are not really Hebrews, I don't really think that matters. I think what matters is that if you're a believer in the Messiah or in God, the Most High, El Elyon, Yahuwah, Eloah, if you're a believer in Him and you're in His land, you are His people. You're going to do the Torah, you're going to believe in all this, you are His people. You believe in His Bible, you are His people. Period. Blood does not matter. Your lineage does not matter. You are His people. So what happened to the Germans, the most brilliant people that backed up the Bible, they were like vicious about it too, because they hated Moses Shapira for trying to bring something different to the table that they didn't understand. This is 70 years before the Dead Sea Scrolls just flipped everybody on their head. This is from the Dead Sea Scrolls, though. It's very, very clear. They chewed him out. They even killed him because this scroll of Deuteronomy threatened the Masoretic text, right? But the point is how much these theologians actually cared about the Bible. They cared about it. And what do they do today? They don't care about it. They're nobody today. They're nobody in the biblical world of philosophy. They're not astounding anymore. They're not astounding anymore. They're not important. And I believe that they lost it. And I don't think that they lost it because they killed satanic people. I think they lost it because they did do something wrong with World War II and killing the people of God. Now here's the dark theory about this, is the Jews, if they are not the people of God, that generation at the time pretty much did a sacrifice, right? So everybody that died in the chambers and everything was a generational sacrifice so that the Jews to come would be rich. And I don't want to start naming names, but if you know who owns the banks, if you know how most of movie industry, I don't want to say the word, if you know how most of the actors are Jewish and very successful, then this is probably why they sacrificed a generation to Satan to reap riches, right? And that simply Hitler was trying to stop them or do something else to that matter, but they just needed a narrative to form to blame him. So let's say that that's true. He did what he did. The German people were top biblical scholars. They were very respected. They defended the Bible. They killed these people. Now they're mostly atheists. I don't think so. I think they killed the people of God, people that believed in God, people that had no They're not of the synagogue of Satan. In other words, these are people. These are either messianic or not. Okay. Point is they believed in the God of Israel. They believed that they were Israel, and they were killed because even in Germany they would bang on the churches, the Christian churches that were Germans, saying help us," and they would just play their worship music louder and ignore them until they went away and got swept off the streets. Now, in doing that, in not standing up for the people of God, I believe their lampstand, their menorah, was taken away, just like Revelation says. And that's why these top scholars and everything that previously existed 100 years ago and less, right? Dietrich Bonhoeffer was very profound. He was during World War II. He died defending the Christian faith. He died in prison, being anti-Hitler. That's what I have to say about the six-pointed Star of David. It's not demonic. It's Davidic. The Elim, the Baphomet, is the demonic star. The synagogue of the Jews is not the synagogue of Satan. Those are of the sons of Satan. Those are of the fellowship of Satan. Whoever you want to say that those are, it's people that fit that description, not that fit a synagogue description. Synagogue simply means a place of gathering. And if the Jews were satanic people, then the Germans that were blessed scholars and just a huge support for the Bible, for history, for theology, why did they lose it? Why are they mostly atheist? Why don't they do anything like that anymore? The most profound people we have are now here in America, and even those of us over here, the theology is changing so bad that we don't even know who was top of the line 100 years ago, 70 years ago, 100 years ago, 120 years ago. So that's my explanation for the Star of David. I hope you enjoyed. Just give you something to think about. Stop calling those people the synagogue of Satan. Do much more research. Use the Hebrew. Use the Greek correctly. Get your story straight. Study your history. Put it all together. Go back to the Paleo. Go back to the Dead Sea Scrolls. Reinterpret Amos. It's about the Messiah, not the Star of Moloch. And half your argument's already destroyed. And so there we go. Repent. Do what you got to do. Definitely study to show yourself to prove. So I hope you enjoyed that little story. So thank you for watching. Bye.
Lord, forgive us because we know not what we do. You died on the cross, they still seeking for the truth. You left the comforter, the Holy Spirit is the proof. You shed blood, gave his life, what else must he do? No faith, they trust in the money, not in you. They walking lost in the dark, don't even got a clue. Looking for the light, but the light is you. Searching for some love, but the love is you. Forgive us. Forgive us, Lord, for everything that we done, Lord. For we know not what we do.